Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week, the first recap of 2024. This week we have Elon Musk sending satellites to space for cell phone service. We apparently have aliens walking around in a Miami mall. And we also have extremely bad news about the debt in the United States. Let's go ahead and get started. So, overall this week, we didn't have a lot of economic news, but we did have enough to where the markets did move a little bit. There's a little bit of an expectation that maybe the economy isn't necessarily doing as good as what they're reporting, but the reports that did come out do show the central bank in the United States, which control the interest rates, that the economy is technically doing good because the labor market is tight, meaning that it's hard for people to find a job because there aren't as many jobs available, essentially, just to summarize. So overall for the week, the North American markets were mostly negative. Toronto was the only one that was positive. In global warming news, the capital of China, Beijing, recorded its coldest December on record since records began in 1951. And also, Finland and Sweden recorded the coldest temperatures on record, which were negative 40 degrees Celsius or negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. One of the things that I want to remind everyone is that the electric buses that Norway, which is in the region, ordered, in addition to, for example, Minnesota, don't work in extremely cold temperatures. So if you live in these areas or you're planning to move to these areas, you may want to consider another piece of technology because the electric vehicles are probably not going to work in those colds anyway. Nearly half of the United States companies in the United States plan to drop the requirement of a bachelor's degree for jobs in 2024. So now you may not even need to go to college to get a new job. Although I would recommend a side hustle like trading or YouTube or, some other things that you can do, because the increase at which your wages are going to go up is not going to be the same percentage as if you had your own business or kind of did something on your own on the side. And the Florida Surgeon General is warning against the use of the things in your arm from the pandemic. I don't want to say it so they don't ban this channel too, as a possible cancer risk. Remember, last week I reported to you that the news is reporting that we're going to have a heart failure risk because of the new strains of the C ending with Ovid. Overseas market news, the European markets were mixed. Most of those were around 1% or so. The Istanbul markets were mostly positive at over 2%, or the biggest positive of all, let's say, in Europe. Latin American markets were mixed. The biggest winner there was the Merval in Argentina. So far, so good with the new libertarian candidate, Javier Milei. Their markets went up over 13%. Africa and the Middle East, mostly mixed. Asia and Australia, the far, far east, mostly mixed as well. And then in Bitcoin and crypto news, we had a situation where Bitcoin, there was a liquidation of about $300 million, if I'm not mistaken, a huge liquidation on Tuesday. But it did recover, and for the week, it finished at positive over 3%. They made it to 43,777. Coinbase, which is the largest crypto exchange in the United States, now is moving into the European Union. They're planning to buy a company that's going to provide them with the licenses to be able to provide crypto derivatives in the whole Eurozone, which is good. And in commodity prices, good news for food prices. If you haven't noticed the shrinkflation in the markets, dropped 13.7% so far in 2023. The only exceptions are sugar and also rice. Rice was up over 21%, while sugar is up 26.7%, which is the highest on the actual index. The situation in the Red Sea, though, the cost of shipping a container from Asia to Europe, since they can't go through the Red Sea, which is basically the Suez Canal in Egypt, went up by 173%. Maersk, which is 1/6 of all global traffic, they decided that they're not going to go through the Red Sea anymore because one of their ships got attacked. So they're going to go around. It's going to take much more time. And there's another shipping company, I forgot the name, but it's out of Germany. They reported that it's going to cost an extra $1 million to go around Africa rather than through the Red Sea. So that can spur the inflation bug again due to the fact that it's going to add a significant amount of cost to ship things now from Asia to Europe. The U.S. biggest exporter of LNG, which is liquefied natural gas. The United States now has become the world's biggest exporter again, superseding Australia and Qatar. Remember that part of the problem that the European economy is having, mostly the German economy, which is based on industrial production, is having that cheap Russian gas. But somebody, not named the United States, decided to blow up the gas pipeline. If you guys remember, that happened a few years ago from Russia to Germany. So now Europe is basically buying the gas from the United States, which is a lot more expensive. U.S. crude went up over 3%, 73.81, while Brent went up over 2.23% to 78.76. There's now a fear, and there's also a significant uncertainty about what's going to happen with the global economy due to the situation in the Red Sea. Because of that uncertainty, obviously the demand for oil is going to increase because now all of these ships that go to Europe from Asia, they're going to have to use a lot more fuel. And remember that, just to kind of put things into perspective, and as part of the reason why I do these videos, the United States is still the largest economy in the world. Number 2 is China. And then number 3, even though the European Union isn't a country as a whole, the Euro bloc is considered the 3rd largest economy in the world. So we have the 2nd largest economy in the world in China, and others like Japan, which is the 4th largest, shipping things from Asia to Europe, which is the 3rd largest economy in the world. So we have the 2nd largest, 4th largest, among others, shipping things to this 3rd largest in the world. And those costs are going to significantly increase, which is a lot of people are asking now about the situation with inflation, which could possibly go up significantly. Copper prices are set to explode, according to a few analysts. Right now, it's about 8,500 and change per ton. And they're saying that it might get up to 15,000 due to the green revolution. There's going to be a lot of demand for copper due to the EVs and also the solar panels. And gold for the week, due to the little bit of a recuperation of the dollar, gold went down by 0.82% at $2,046.30. While my favorite market, if you guys have been following me for a while, silver went down by 2.66% to $23.26. Really, really bad news about the debt. The debt now in the United States has reached $34 trillion. The interest now is the biggest expense outside of Social Security and Medicare. It's even bigger than military spending in the United States, which is a big problem. So we reached $34 trillion 2 months after hitting $33 trillion, 2 years after hitting $30 trillion, and 4 years after hitting $24 trillion. So it's literally starting to go parabolic. And there's a big problem now. During the last administration, Trump wanted to refinance all the debt at a much lower rate because the rates were practically at 0, and he wanted to do it at 100 years. But because of mean tweets, they didn't want to allow him to do that. So now we have to refinance almost half of the debt, which is almost $17 trillion, roughly, at much higher rates. So now nobody's going to want our debt. And in order for us to finance the debt, we're going to need to print our own money to be able to buy our own debt. On top of that, most other countries around the world don't want to use U.S. dollars anymore because of the precarious situation of the United States. So now the majority of the U.S. dollars that have been printed in history are overseas. So as those dollars come back home and we monetize our own debt, essentially we print it to buy our own debt. Imagine just you having a printer and then literally just taking that and then rebuying your own debt and refinancing it. Inflation is coming, so hope you're prepared. Bankruptcy in the United States catapulted 18% in 2003 because of the high interest rates, and the debt obligation of the debt per person in the United States, over $100,000 per person, and per taxpayer, $264,000 per taxpayer. Now, Biden administration has tried to blame the Trump administration due to the tax cuts, but one of the things that he fails to mention is that he added $6 trillion in debt, which is the biggest problem of all. Eurozone inflation jumped before the forecast last month. They're now at 2.9%. The things that contributed to that most of all was the food, alcohol, and tobacco. And the GDP, or excuse me, the GBP, the British gold, the pound sterling, I should say, from England, reached a high in 2013 against the dollar. This is about 16 months after hitting a record low against the dollar as well. And Turkey's not doing very well with their inflation. They're at 64.8% annual inflation. And the central bank just raised the interest rates from 8.5% to 42.5%. So imagine right now in the United States, the central bank saying, hey guys, we're going to raise the rates to 40 because we need to slow down inflation a little bit. Literally, the economy would come to a screeching halt because nobody can buy anything. Political news, Russia unveiled their new avant-garde hypersonic missile. Travels at 27 times the speed of sound. 34,000 kilometers per hour, or about 21,000 miles per hour. Just putting on our conspiracy theory hat for a second. Conspiracy Marcello says that it kind of seems to me what they're trying to do is to spread out the United States to try to make them essentially go bankrupt. We have the Russia-Ukrainian war, now the Israel-Gaza war, now the situation in the Red Sea where the United States is literally launching million-dollar missiles to hit $10,000, $50,000 missiles and drones. We have an escalating situation in Venezuela and Guyana, which is in South America. Essentially, Venezuela is trying to annex half of their territory to take over their oil fields. And then we have Taiwan, which China said in their yearly address that get ready for some trouble. And now we have North Korea this week launching 200 artillery shells to an island close to South Korea. So it looks like everything is starting to escalate, and I think they're trying to plan it on purpose because essentially what they're trying to do, in my opinion, is just spread out the U.S. where eventually we just can't afford it anymore, and then it's going to collapse, and they're going to kind of move in and control the areas that aren't as strategic to us anymore. Not bueno. Taiwan's election next week poses a challenge to the United States. It doesn't matter essentially whether the ruling party wins or the opposition wins. But there's a situation now where it doesn't matter who wins. Remember that China still considers Taiwan part of China, while Taiwan, currently an independent nation, says that they're not part of China and they're independent. And the U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to take up the Trump case about whether or not Trump can be disqualified from appearing in Colorado's ballot due to the supposed actions surrounding January 6th on the Capitol attack. One of the things that I always try to do these videos apolitically, right? I just not choose the right or the left. They're both corrupt at the end of the day. But I think we've entered into banana republic territory when you try to say that somebody did something like the insurrection of Trump when they haven't been found guilty in a court of law. And part of our judicial system essentially says that you're innocent until proven guilty. And as far as I can see, whether you hate him and you say that he's guilty or whether you love him and you say he's not, at the end of the day, there's no judge or court that says that he's been guilty of doing that. So that's why I think, like, literally there's a situation now where we're just turning into a banana republic because now you can just go after anybody whether they're guilty or not, which is a big problem because that's what happens in third world countries essentially. Economic news, China's manufacturing PMI contracted further in 2023. More policy support is probably going to be needed in China to recover their economy. And the Eurozone factories have contracted for the 18th consecutive month. Again, part of the big problem is Germany, which is the fourth largest economy in the world. Japan was 3. I think I said it backwards earlier, but they're just not doing very well at all. Singapore's economy grew by 2.8% year over year, and the Labor Department in the United States says that layoffs decelerated in the final full week of 2023, meaning that the labor market is still tight. And initial jobless claims, or people requesting unemployment benefits for the first time, went down by 18,000 with the week ending December 30th. So these are the numbers that I told you that the central bank in the United States might look at to say, oh, well, the economy seems to be doing pretty well. And they might keep the raises higher for longer, which is not going to be good for you and I. And I didn't touch on this yet, but I don't know if you guys saw what happened in Miami. If you guys remember a few months ago, we had the video of those aliens or those beings or something in the backyard of somebody's house in Las Vegas. There was a situation in Miami this week where there was, something like 300 cop cars and a helicopter and all this stuff. And the official report said that it was 4 teenagers that were causing some problems. but some other people were saying that there were these beings, 8 feet, 10 foot tall, gray beings that were walking through the mall. So it kind of seems like this stuff is starting to escalate as well, which I think is pretty weird, if it's true. Corporate news. Tesla topped Norway's car sales for the 3rd consecutive year in 2023, leading the rivals by even more now. 5 out of every 6 cars in Norway is actually an electric EV vehicle, and 82.4% of all new vehicles sold in 2023 were electric. Now, hopefully it doesn't get too cold in Norway, because remember that those electric buses didn't work in extreme cold in Minnesota and Norway. So hopefully that doesn't happen, because everybody's car isn't going to work, essentially. Walgreens went down by over 5% their shares due to the fact that Walgreens decided to cut their dividend down to 25 cents from 48 cents. So it's more than a 50% cut. What they want to do is shore up their cash flow, which means that they're not doing very well. And Rivian, which is the electric vehicle maker, they mostly make pickup trucks and also SUVs. They went down nearly 9% after they didn't meet the estimates of what they were going to deliver. They actually delivered just a touch under 14,000 vehicles, but now they have a bit of competition with the Cybertruck coming out. And if you didn't see in Miami Design Week, Pharrell, which is from the Neptunes, or the producer that helped Jay-Z and things like that, he was driving around a Cybertruck, so it looks like it's becoming fashionable. Ford is increasing some of its prices of its Ford Lightning EV as well, looking like a lot more people. There was thousands of dealerships that actually requested the Biden administration stop forcing the EVs down our throats, because the consumers don't want to buy them anymore. And Tesla has officially lost its title as the biggest EV maker in the world to BYD in China. They officially sell more EV cars in total than Tesla, even though most of their market is just China. Model Y became the best-selling electric vehicle in Australia in 2023. And Starlink also, which also is from Elon Musk, just sent up 6 satellites, which are going to be used for cell phone service, direct satellite to cell phone service for rural areas. One of the things that Elon Musk said is that it's not good for urban areas because it can't really compete, but it's great for rural areas that don't have as much coverage. Texas-based Southwestern Energy and Oklahoma-based Chesapeake Energy are going to get very close to a merger to create the $17 billion and soon-to-be #1 U.S. natural gas producer in the United States. And last but not least, in the international events, 7.6 earthquake in Japan. It caused a football-sized piece of land to go up in the coast. And I think that this is going to start to escalate, and I'm going to predict this. I think we're going to have a big earthquake in California probably this year, next year. Hopefully I'm wrong, but it seems like things are starting to escalate on that front as well. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, the preppers were right.